interested in the entertainment, sports, shopping or gaming, and certainly not interested in politics. But actually, all of these things that you are interested in come back to politics. Decisions on immigration, policies for healthcare, house building, even the sale of computer games or building of sports stadiums all start with politics. Are you thinking of going on to further education? Hoping for a student loan? Where do you think the decisions about funding for education come from? You've got it. Politics. Whatever you think, there will be other people who think the same. Identifying the political party that most closely mirrors what you believe won't be that difficult. It's true that politics is not without its own image problems, and there have been scandals and bust-ups that have not shown our leaders at their best. But for better or worse, our political system is what we have, and the only way we can hope to make a difference is to get involved, even if it is only to put an X in a box. Having a vote is having a say. You wouldn't let anyone else decide what music you should listen to, would you? You would always want to have a say about what you wear, eat, or do for fun, wouldn't you? So why wouldn't you want to have a say about what happens to you or your world? Have your say. Use your vote.
Voting is one of the most important freedoms we have as Americans. It is one of the main ways we can have a say in who represents our cities, states, and our country. It's also one way we can make our voices heard on issues that are important to us, such as education, healthcare, and energy policy. But to have your vote count, you must understand and follow the voting process. The voting process begins by registering to vote. U.S. citizens can register to vote if they turn 18 before the next election. In some states, you can register when you turn 16. The National Male Voter Registration Form can be downloaded from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, or EAC. The form can also be found at your state's Secretary of State website, or at post offices, motor vehicle departments, and other government offices. The Secretary of State of each state sets the rules for voter registration. For example, in many states, you must be registered to vote 1 month before Election Day to cast a ballot. Visit your state's Secretary of State website for the details. It is important to stay informed and prepare yourself before casting your vote. Educate yourself about the issues, candidates, and initiatives that are presented on the ballot. There are many reputable organizations that can provide you with information about the candidates. Remember to use your critical thinking skills to evaluate the information for bias. Before Election Day arrives, find out the address of your polling location and its hours. Each state decides how to conduct their elections. Some require specific voter identification. Others ban voters from wearing campaign apparel at the polls. In some states, you can vote early, or if you can't make it on Election Day, you can request an absentee ballot. Make sure you know the process for your state. Once you vote, double check to make sure your ballot is accurate before turning it in. Electronic voting machines allow you to double check your choices before you make your final submission. By knowing when, where, and how to vote, you can make sure your voice is heard.
Most people have heard of the Electoral College during presidential election years. But what exactly is the Electoral College? Simply said, it is a group of people appointed by each state who formally elect the President and Vice President of the United States. To understand how this process began and how it continues today, we can look at the Constitution of the United States. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. It specifies how many electors each state is entitled to have. Since 1964, there have been 538 electors in each presidential election. How did they decide on the number 538? Well, the number of electors is equal to the total voting membership of the United States Congress, 435 representatives plus 100 senators and 3 electors from the District of Columbia. Essentially, the Democratic candidate and Republican candidate are each trying to add up the electors in every state so that they surpass 270 electoral votes, or just over half of 538 votes, and win the presidency. So how do states even get electoral votes? Each state receives a particular number of electors based on population size. The census is conducted every 10 years, so every time the census happens, states might gain or lose a few electoral votes. Let's say you're a voter in California, a state with 55 electoral votes. If your candidate wins in California, they get all 55 of the state's electoral votes. If your candidate loses, they get none. This is why many presidential candidates want to win states like Texas, Florida, and New York. If you currently add up the electoral votes of those 3 states, you would have 96 electoral votes. Even if a candidate won North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and West Virginia, they would only gain 31 electoral votes total from those 8 states. Here's where it can get a little tricky. On a rare occasion, like in the year 2000, someone can win the popular vote but fail to gain 270 electoral votes. This means that the winner may have won and collected their electoral votes by small margins, winning just enough states with just enough electoral votes, but the losing candidate may have captured large voter margins in the remaining states. If this is the case, the very large margins secured by the losing candidate in the other states would add up to over 50% of the ballots cast nationally. Therefore, the losing candidate may have gained more than 50% of the ballots cast by voters, but failed to gain 270 of the electoral votes. Some critics of the Electoral College argue the system gives an unfair advantage to states with large numbers of electoral votes. Think of it this way. It is possible for a candidate to not get a single person's vote, not one vote, in 39 states or the District of Columbia, yet be elected president by winning the popular vote in just 11 of these 12 states: California, New York, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Georgia, or Virginia. This is why both parties pay attention to these states. However, others argue that the Electoral College protects small states such as Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and even geographically large states with small populations like Alaska, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. That's because a candidate can't completely ignore small states, because in a close election, every electoral vote counts. There are certain states that have a long history of voting for a particular party. These are known as safe states. For the past 4 election cycles, in 1996, 2000, 2004, and 2008, Democrats could count on states like Oregon, Maryland, Michigan, and Massachusetts, whereas the Republicans could count on states like Mississippi, Alabama, Kansas, and Idaho. States that are teetering between parties are called swing states. In the past 4 election cycles, Ohio and Florida have been swing states, twice providing electoral votes for a Democratic candidate and twice providing electoral votes for a Republican candidate. Think about it. Do you live in a safe state? If so, is it a Democratic or Republican safe state? Do you live in a swing state? Are your neighboring states swing or safe? Is the population in your state increasing or decreasing? And do not forget, when you're watching the electoral returns on election night every 4 years, and the big map of the United States is on the screen, know that the magic number is 270 and start adding.
All right. So this is the one I want to talk about first. All right, first of all, census. They barely mentioned it, but the census is very important to voting. That is how we get our apportionment. So every 10 years, census comes out, it is actually illegal for you not to send that back in. Okay, so if you don't want someone knocking on your door over and over and over and over and over, send it in. Okay, I'm one of those workers who go and knock on the door. That's not fun. Okay, they even have it electronic now. You just send it in and so on and so forth, and nobody will come knock on your door. However, if you don't, people will be knocking on your door all the time trying to get that information. Now, the census does not share any of that information with ICE or anything like that. So that information stays, so if you are not a legal immigrant, or you're not in this country legally, they don't even care, okay? They just need to know how many people are in the states so that they can be apportioned properly and have representation properly, okay? Plus, the information that they collect also helps with socioeconomic programs like welfare, for reduced lunches, student loans, things like that. So it's really important to know how many people are in the state, as well as some people will get a long form that will go on and ask how much you make, so on and so forth, how many people are in your family, and specific questions. The reason for that is because the poverty line, we need to know what the poverty line is for the state so that you can qualify for those socioeconomic programs if the amount that you make is not appropriate for living, okay? So the numbers that they get per that census report is how they do a portion, like they just said on that video that you just watched, how they do a portion, how many representatives you have for that state. So makes it important for that. Now, as you were walking in, a couple of you said your vote doesn't count. So does your vote count? Keith, I know you said no. Now you're saying yes.
I was just messing.
You were just messing. Daniel, does your vote count?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
Does your vote count? Does your vote count?
No.
Does your vote count?
No.
Does your vote count?
I don't know.
Does your vote count? Yes. Okay. So, I'm gonna say yes too, because, well, I vote all the time, but, here's why. Now, you guys are all too young to remember this, but it may not even been the last one, it may have been the time before, but one of the last governor elections, there were only 150 votes. That was the difference between who won and who got second. 150. Okay? There are 250 people who go to the Hayes campus and are full-time students right now. If every one of those students would have voted for the second place person, we would have a different governor. Does your vote count? Hell yeah. Okay, now, another situation, people will say, well, that's for the governor, it's not for the president, okay? But here's the situation, okay? So, if 150 people can change the course of who our governor is, could it change who the Electoral College has to vote for?
No.
Why do you say no?
Because there's nothing in the rules of the Electoral College that they have to represent the people. Only like 3 states have rules against it.
You're actually incorrect. That was my next question, actually. Well, actually, it's 2 questions, but I'll go with that one. So, in actuality, the Electoral College does have to go with the popular vote, except for in 2 states. Nebraska and Maine, they do not have to go with the popular vote. That's the only 2 states that the Electoral College does not have to vote what the popular vote does. Okay? And I can tell you what Nebraska's gonna vote. They're always gonna vote red. Maine, I don't know about, but I do know about Nebraska. Okay? So, a little bit off there. Here's a question though. Why was the Electoral College even put into place? Does anyone know that? Okay, well, in doing my research for this, I found out that the Electoral College was put into place clear back in 1787 when they were writing the Constitution, because they did not believe that men, laymen, men who were not of political science majors or knew anything about politics, were too stupid to elect their president. So they in fact did the electoral college because those people would know how to elect a president. And then give the states the right to choose whether they wanted to go with the popular vote or not. Okay, so, and I say men, only because you and I, we weren't even thought as people at that time. We didn't even get the right to vote until after blacks got the right to vote here in this country. So that tells you where women were thought of in 1787. Okay, we didn't get to vote at all until mid-1800s. That's a long time after 200 years that white men were getting to vote, that women did not. We were not even close to having the ability to vote at that point. So we really weren't smart enough, evidently. Of course, women did not go to school. All we did was, the only jobs that were okay for women to have were teachers, and if you weren't a teacher, then you stayed at home. So, yeah. So, sorry guys. So 2 states can decide for themselves, for political science, for electoral college who to vote for. Otherwise, they do have to go on the popular vote. So in that aspect, it is important for us, possibly, to vote. Now, does that mean that our voting system is not without flaw? Absolutely not. Does that mean that the person who should get voted in does? Absolutely not. Okay. However, I do know it's not like Russia, where Putin goes into be on the ballot and everyone knows Putin's already going to win because otherwise he kills you and you don't even get a vote, you know. So pretty bad in other places. So, all right, so this is the voting information, or how the votes ended up in 2016. Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Anyone remember the controversy in this particular election?
Hillary Clinton was a woman.
Yes, she was. Well, supposedly. Might only identify as, I'm not 100% sure on that, but, you know, whatever. Yes, she is.
Yep.
But that wasn't the controversy. What happened in this election?
You know, they think like there was some cheating involved or something.
That was 2020. We'll talk about that too.
Didn't one of them like win the electoral college and one of them won the popular vote?
Absolutely. Hillary Clinton won popular vote. Donald Trump actually became president because of the electoral college. Huge uproar. Now the video you guys just watched showed you that that's happened before. Happened in 2000 with Al Gore and George W. Bush. No, George H. The first George. No, it was George W. Bush because he's the one that was in on 9/11. So, it's happened actually 4 times in this history, benefiting both sides. So they can't even say, well, it only benefits one side. It doesn't. It benefits both sides. But if you look at that map right there, red is Republican, Donald Trump. Blue is Hillary Clinton. What do you see on that map? A lot of red. A lot of red, right? How could she have gotten the popular vote then?
Land doesn't vote.
Say?
Land doesn't vote.
Okay, explain that with some other way of saying that.
The majority of people are not in the land of the red.
Okay, exactly. Where are the majority of people located?
Mostly in the blue.
Okay, yes. We're at in the blue.
Big cities.
Okay, big cities, absolutely. So, places like New York, places like San Francisco, they're in the blue. Okay, y'all know about San Francisco, very liberal. Hillary Clinton was actually from New York, so that's not a surprise that people voted for her. However, Donald Trump also is from New York. He doesn't live there at this point, but Trump Towers is in New York, but they are more Democratic there, okay? So, how do people live in those cities? Anyone know? I guess I'm not asking a good question. Like, what type of structures do they live in? Apartments. Skyscrapers on top of each other. Okay? Many people on top of each other. All right? Even if we go to a place like Kansas City, you don't see those skyscrapers like you do in New York or San Francisco. Okay? So they pack a whole lot of people in a little small area. Okay? So that being said, that's how the population is so much more in New York and San Francisco, because they have a whole bunch of people. Even if you go to like Kansas City, you're going to probably see a lot of single homes that are close together, not having very much space between them. Or you might see an apartment complex that has 1 or 2 floors, but you're not going to see 100. Okay? Like they do in New York. All right? So, big difference there. All right? Another thing is, if we look at a couple of other places, so tip of Texas here and tip of Florida here, completely blue. Anyone know why in 2016? I know this is well before you guys were able to vote. Okay, so in 2016, 2015, in that area of time, when they are getting ready for elections, it is being said that if you do not vote Democrat, first of all, you're deplorable. You are second-class citizen. Okay? And secondly, Donald Trump is going to send all the immigrants back home on buses. He's going to bus everyone out of this country. Okay? Who lives in those areas? Immigrants, right? People who have come over the border, either from Mexico or Cuba for Florida, and fear of having to go home. One fear especially, I have children that was born in the United States, and if I leave, my kids will still be here, and who's going to take care of them? That's a big issue, okay? All right, so, not uncommon that they would vote for Hillary Clinton, because she's going to make sure that they are able to stay here. Plus, if you know anything about Democrat versus Republican, Democrat gives a lot more socioeconomic programs than Republicans do, and there's a lot of promises that are made that aren't necessarily kept, okay? Like free education. Free education is right. You do get a free education if you come over to the United States until you go to college. When you go to college, you can't even get student loans because you're not a citizen. All right? So free education stops at that point. All right? And so that becomes an issue, but you aren't thinking about that if you're needing to come over to the United States, or you want to come over to the United States for a better life for your child. You're just thinking right now, you know, getting away from the bad in Mexico. People make it now here in an hour what a person in Mexico makes in an entire day. Okay, so, or more. And they work hard. They do things that a lot of people don't want to do because they are willing to put in the work Cause they're making that much more money. Also, how do people in Mexico live? Anyone know?
Dirty,
Say again?
dirty.
Oh, it is dirty, yes, especially down there at the border. There are a lot of people that are living in cardboard boxes on the side of the road.
Yeah.
How about family-wise?
Big thing.
Big families, you're right, big families. It is not uncommon for you to see 4 generations living in one home for Mexicans. Okay? They are ingenious, actually, because what they will do is, if several people come over and they're living in the same area, they'll buy one house, all of them will live together, they'll pool all their money, and then they'll buy another house for some of them to move out, and they'll keep doing that until they have the ability to all of them live in their home, in their own home. It doesn't bother them to live 20 people in a home. I say that, I have told you, my best friend from high school is actually Mexican, and so she lives with her parents to help them out. Her daughter did live with her, and her 4 grandchildren lived with her, so there were 4 generations in that home, and that's very common. Okay, they live differently than we do. I lived with my mom for a while. Yeah, no, not happening. Some of you may know about that. You know, you may think, oh, I would never move back in with my parents. It would just drive me nuts. Yeah, it does. It does. Found out real fast, not a good situation. But I wasn't raised to live with my parents, my grandparents, my, aunts, uncles, whatever. So they have more population in that area too, even though there's not as many houses, okay? Because everyone who is 18 or older can go vote, okay? All right, so I want you to pay attention to this. Alaska especially, I don't know why Alaska is blue here. Anyone have any idea why they might be blue? That doesn't make sense to me, so I don't know if you know anything about Alaska then. Huh? Well, somebody had to, or they wouldn't have voted blue. 2 people that love, okay, maybe. I have a friend from high school that lives there now, but did not then. She just recently moved there. Okay, so this was 2016. Here's 2020. See what Alaska did? Completely switched. Now this map is a little bit different. The lighter colors, so the light blue and the pink color, those are fewer. They won the vote, but they're by a fewer margin than the dark colors are. They won by a drastic amount. Okay, so in looking at this, I see up here in New York, there is some pink there. I see down here more pink, fewer dark votes. I see here a lot more red and pink. Some more red and pink up in California as well. Otherwise, it looks pretty similar, right? So why was this outcome different than the first one? Because it doesn't look more blue to me. In fact, if anything, it looks more red to me. Why would that be different? Now, say again?
More people in the populated areas.
Could be. So New York people and San Francisco people could have had more babies, right? Don't know. Why might the tip of Texas have changed some and the tip of Florida change?
Change their mind.
Say again?
Change their mind.
Change their mind. Why? Did Trump actually deport anyone? He didn't. Okay? I know that was a huge scare, but he did not deport anyone. So that kind of changed. Now, think about what you expect to happen in 2024, November. Okay, do you know what the people in Texas are saying right now?
They're having a border scare.
Yep. They are not real pleased with the amount of immigrants that are coming across.
Isn't that typical for election season?
Well, there was a couple weeks ago, there was like 1,000 or something Mexicans that broke through it.
Right, and military age, right?
Yeah.
Supposedly they're saying that they're women and children, but, they're military aged men. And you guys are too young to remember this, but 9/11 happened, and that happened because of immigrants that were in this country, and we didn't know why they were here, or that they were here. Supposedly, someone got some information prior to that, but didn't pass it along. But if you don't know who's here, they could really hurt your country, right? I mean, that's what happened in 9/11. You know, they flew the planes into the World Trade Center and killed a lot of people. Not a good situation, all right? But that has changed, I believe, because of the immigration was not sent, they did not send them back home like they were saying. It was believed that Hillary Clinton would win that election by a long ways, okay? And you gotta be really careful with the polling that happens, like with Gallup poll or with Reuters. So we've talked about statistics and how it is that you come up with information, and whoever it is that's buying that survey or making that survey, they drive what information comes out, right? So what happens, I worked for Gallup for a little while, a sucky job. What happens is the Republican Party will have Gallup poll do a survey with people, but guess where they call? Only the Midwest. Okay, so when they come out and say that Donald Trump will win by a landslide, it's because people in the Midwest are going to vote for him, and that's all you're calling. When we called about the Democrat Party, we're only calling the East Coast and West Coast. Well, if you're only calling the East Coast and West Coast, it's not real hard to get people to say they're gonna vote Democrat. Right? So, a lot of that happened, and then all of a sudden, she doesn't win. Okay? And that kind of was what happened with 2022. 2020 also, in that Donald Trump looked like he was gonna win, the next day, did not. Controversy, of course, there was some. Was that already planned? Probably. So it is questionable, the voting process, and whatever, but, I just kind of have the feeling of if you don't go vote, you don't get a bitch. You know, if you go vote and your person either got in or didn't get in, you have a right to bitch about it, because you voted. And we already talked about whether or not your vote counts, okay? What do you expect for this next one? We kind of talked about it. People in Mexico are pretty upset about how many people are coming across, and the fact that it's not women and children like they're saying. I totally expect that to go more red as well. Economy was much better off 2016 to 2020. You can see that if you go buy gas, or if you are buying groceries. I had to laugh the other day. An old man and an old woman walked by me in Walmart while I was doing taxes, and I heard him say, "Honey, I must be getting stronger." And she said, "Well, why are you getting stronger, honey?" And he says, "I can lift $85 of groceries with one hand now." cause it was one bag. Used to be, it'd be a whole cart full was $85. So I had to laugh about that. And she got a kick out of it too. She's like, honey, you're not getting stronger, it's just in one bag. It's not like it used to be in 4 bags. So it was just kind of humorous. He was saying that. And I did do some taxes for, I have several Mexican immigrants who I do their taxes for. And this is probably the 7th year or something that I've done their taxes. And he was actually saying that they may have to go back to Mexico because things are that bad here. And we were kind of joking with each other because they owed, because their employer did not do what they were supposed to do. But that's neither here nor there. She was supposed to send money back to a sister that has cancer and is not going to be able to now. And we were joking about the fact that he's going to have to eat beans and rice for the rest of the year with no meat in it. And he's like, well, I like beans. I said, yeah, but you want meat in it too, right? And he's like, yeah, but I'll eat beans and rice, I guess, you know. So we were joking around, and he said, you know, Mexico's looking better and better every day. And I said, yeah, but if you go back to Mexico, you have to deal with the cartel. And he said, you're exactly right, and that's why I came here to begin with. But it's sad that they're thinking about going back. I mean, even though he's just saying this, and I know he was just saying it as a joke, that thought has crossed his mind when he said it. You know, that's the pretty sad state that people are in right now, that I see every day. I do expect this to go more red. I don't know that Donald Trump is the best placed person for it to go red, but I know who's not our president right now, and that's neither one of them. Okay. If you think about it, someone else behind the president that we have right now is really the president, because he's not. This is the first time in American history that I've never not seen what the president's doing all the time. I mean, before you could gripe because they were out golfing or on vacation at Martha's Vineyard or whatever they were doing, you could gripe about it because you at least knew what they were doing. You don't even know what's going on now. Used to be that you saw the vice president, but since Kamala Harris was supposed to go down to the border and never went, she's kind of went out of the limelight too. So kind of wonder who it is that is actually leading the country. I have concerns, very big concerns. I don't know what I can say. I'm not sure that Donald Trump is the best. He's very raw.
You think Joe Biden's better?
No. Economically wise, definitely not. We were doing much better. We had stocks. Remember I told you that when it changed presidencies, that's when we had to sell our stocks because we needed the money. Economically, things were much better in 2016 to 2020 than they are now. We were using our own oil, making Americans rich as opposed to making someone else rich. And we have the oil here. That's the bad thing. We have more oil than a lot of other countries that we buy from. And I don't know if that's the idea, buy them all out of their oil so that they don't have any and we're the only ones that have it. But it doesn't seem like a good plan to me. I don't know. So I don't actually know who I'm voting for. But I know who I'm not voting for. But I don't know who's running the country now. That's the scary part. And the one video that you did watch, and here's the thing, the one video you did watch talked about, would you want someone else to decide what you wore, or what you listened to, or what you ate? There are countries that are in that situation at this point, okay? There are countries you cannot eat certain things, no pork. You cannot eat, no beef in certain countries. You cannot wear certain things in other countries. If a woman was caught without her head covered or her face covered in certain countries, would be killed. There are places you cannot watch TV or certain things on TV. There are countries that you can't even be on social media. They don't allow it. So you get the wrong person in to lead your country, and that's where you become, or you can become. Not necessarily that you do. So you gotta really watch what happens there. It's real easy to register to vote. All you have to do is get a driver's license. Click yes, you want to do that. You don't even have to do any of the paperwork that it was describing on that video. It's that easy. And you're registered to vote. We did have the primaries last week, and Joe Biden and Trump did run away with those. I think really they're the only two that are running at this point, because I think everyone that was running against Trump has dropped out. And I don't believe anyone was running against Joe Biden, because he's the incumbent. Usually, they pick out the person that's the president if he's gonna run again. Although there were people that were on those ballots, because, as people drop out, they don't take them off the ballot because it costs too much to reprint all the ballots, so, that is, so we will be talking, we will be having, debates. Those are always kind of comical, if you can handle watching them. I remember there was one school shooting, and the school shooting wasn't funny, but the press conference was funny, because Joe Biden stood up and was talking to a group of kids who was there, and they were there because it was a school shooting, and of course, PR. And he didn't even talk about the school shooting. He talked about his favorite cookies were chocolate chip cookies, and his favorite ice cream was chocolate chip ice cream, and he had like 10 cartons of chocolate chip ice cream because he has to eat it every night. And he was telling these kids that, and he just continued talking about chocolate chip ice cream. Finally, the news broke away from him and said, if he ever starts talking about what it is he's supposed to be talking about, we'll pan back to him, but we don't think you need to talk, you don't need to listen to him talk about chocolate chip ice cream for the next hour. And he never did talk about the school shooting. He got off. I think they probably pulled him off the stage, like, come on, you're done, whatever. So, that's kind of questionable about, that's why, he's not even allowed to answer questions a lot of times. And you'll see it if you watch something, but he'll be like, I can't take any questions, I gotta go, they don't want him to take questions. So that's kind of odd too, but, I guess we will see what happens. Any questions or comments about any of this? Yes, I know this is not about math, but it is about your thinking skills, and it is also the, why we do what we do with the math, the apportionment, why that's important, and so on and so forth, okay? All right, so you do not have class Friday. You do not have class next Monday. So next Wednesday, when you come in, we are doing chapter 3. Chapter 3 is on logic, okay? That is not that hard, not that difficult. We will go through that, and then you will have the remainder of the week. I do have one video on permutations and combinations that I want to show you. You will have the remainder of the week to work on chapter 4, chapter 12, and chapter 3. Okay? Excuse me, chapter 3 you will get completed on Wednesday. I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to do an assignment, and then it will push you guys into wanting to do your assignment on WebAssign immediately because you want to get it done because it's that easy. All right? Questions? All right, come back ready for chapter 3 then. Have a great weekend, and see you then.